Love, they say, is patient. Love is kind. But for Ethan Cole, love was a battlefield that left scars too deep for the heart to forget. He met Isabella on a golden afternoon in Lagos, when the air smelled of rain and roasted corn. She was everything he never knew he wanted. Intelligent, soft-spoken, with a smile that could calm his storms. Ethan, an architect with big dreams and a quiet soul, found peace in her laughter. They met at a friend's birthday party. She spilled juice on his white shirt in panic, apologizing 1,000 times. He only laughed. That simple, awkward moment became the beginning of a love story that felt like destiny. Days turned to months. They became inseparable. Ethan would wait outside her office every evening just to walk her home. They'd talk about their dreams, the house they would build together, the family they'd raise, the trips they'd take. Everyone who knew them said they were perfect for each other. He introduced her to his mother. He started saving to buy a ring. He even designed a house plan with her initials hidden in the blueprint, because to him, she was already home. But love has a strange way of testing hearts. One Sunday morning, Isabella said she needed space, just a little time to think. Ethan didn't argue. He thought it was just stress, maybe from work. He gave her space, but that space became silence, and that silence turned into distance. Weeks passed with no calls. Messages went unanswered. When he finally visited her apartment, she wasn't there. Her neighbor said she had moved out, and that she was now living with another man. Ethan refused to believe it, until he saw her one evening at a restaurant. She was laughing, holding the hand of a man he'd never seen before, the same way she used to hold his. When she noticed him, her face froze. For a moment, guilt flashed in her eyes, but she quickly looked away. The man she was with asked, "Who's that?" She said, "Just someone I used to know." Those words pierced deeper than any knife. Just someone I used to know. Ethan walked away that night, his world falling apart one heartbeat at a time. He didn't cry immediately. He just sat in his car, staring at the steering wheel. Tried to understand how something so beautiful could die so suddenly. But when the rain began to fall, he broke, like a dam giving way after too much pressure. From that day, he made a vow. He stood before his mirror, eyes red and tired, and whispered, "Never again. I will never love again." And he meant it. Years rolled by. Ethan buried himself in work. He became one of the best architects in the city. Awards, money, success, he had it all. But love, that word no longer existed in his world. He smiled politely when people mentioned it, but inside his heart was locked. A museum of memories no one could enter. Friends introduced him to women, but he kept them all at a distance. "I'm fine alone," he'd say. But deep down he wasn't. Nights were long, silent, and heavy with the ghosts of what could have been. Then one day, fate crossed his path with a woman named Tara. She was nothing like Isabella, warm, clumsy, and annoyingly honest. She didn't try to impress him. She just showed up with her messy hair, her laughter, and her strange ability to make everything feel alive again. Ethan tried to push her away. He told her plainly, "I'm not the kind of man who loves anymore." She only smiled and said, "Then I'll just stay as your friend until you remember how." Bit by bit, she did what love always does, rebuild what was broken, not by promises or passion, but by patience. One evening, as they watched the sunset from his office balcony, Ethan realized his heart was beating differently, softer, freer. He looked at her and said quietly, "You're dangerous, you know that?" She laughed. "Why?" "Because you're making me forget my vow." And she whispered, "Maybe it's time you did." It had been 4 years since Ethan made that vow, the vow that once ruled his heart like a law carved in stone. And yet, here he was breaking it without even realizing. Tara had changed everything. Her love wasn't loud. She didn't chase, beg, or promise forever. She simply showed up day after day, like sunlight through old curtains. She reminded him what laughter sounded like. She filled his once empty apartment with music, stories, and the smell of burnt pancakes on Sunday mornings. For the first time in years, Ethan was happy, not because life was perfect, but because he finally felt alive again. But fate, as always, had one last test to give him. It was a Thursday afternoon when Ethan's past came knocking, literally. He was in his office, sketching a design for a new cultural center, when his secretary said softly, "Sir, there's a lady asking to see you. She says her name is Isabella." The name hit him like thunder in a clear sky. For a moment, he froze. He could hear his heartbeat. He wanted to say no, to send her away, but something inside whispered, "Face it, you're not that broken man anymore." He took a deep breath and said, "Send her in." When Isabella walked in, she was no longer the same woman he remembered. Her elegance was still there, but her eyes carried the weight of regret. She smiled faintly, a smile that trembled. "Ethan," she began softly, "you look different." "I should," he replied quietly. "It's been a long time." There was a pause, heavy, filled with the ghost of everything unsaid. She sighed. "I came to say I'm sorry, for how I left, for how I made you feel." Ethan looked at her, calm, unshaken. "Why now?" She lowered her gaze. "Because I finally understand what I lost. The man who loved me, no one has ever loved me like that again." She reached out slightly, but he didn't move. Years ago, that touch would have melted him. Now, it only reminded him of how much he'd healed. He smiled gently. "You didn't lose me, Isabella. You helped me find myself. Painful as it was, I needed it. Because without that heartbreak, I would never have met Tara." Isabella blinked, tears filling her eyes. "Tara, she's a woman who taught me that love isn't about promises, it's about peace." There was silence. Then she nodded slowly, tears rolling down her cheeks. "She's lucky." "No," Ethan said softly. "I'm the lucky one." They talked for a while, not as ex-lovers, but as two people who had finally made peace with their past. When Isabella left, she turned him the door and said, "Thank you for forgiving me." He simply smiled. "Thank you for teaching me what real love isn't." And with that, the chapter finally closed. That night, Ethan drove home. Tara was sitting on the balcony, reading, with her hair falling over her face. When he walked in, she looked up and smiled, that same warm, unguarded smile that healed him from the start. He sat beside her and took her hand. "Tara," he said softly, "I saw Isabella today. She didn't look angry or jealous. She just nodded. And how do you feel?" "Free," he whispered. "For the first time, completely free." She leaned on his shoulder. "Then maybe now you can finally love without fear." Ethan smiled, tears glistening in his eyes. "I already do, because of you." The stars were out that night, bright and endless. Somewhere between laughter and silence, Ethan realized that love wasn't about never being broken. It was about finding someone who made the scars feel like stories instead of wounds. And for the man who once vowed never to love again, love had finally come home. It had been 2 years since Ethan and Tara's love began to bloom. 2 years since he learned how to laugh again, how to hope again, and how to wake up every morning thankful that someone like her existed. They were now engaged, a quiet proposal on a starlit beach, with no audience but the waves and the whisper of the wind. Tara had cried when he knelt down, not because of the diamond, but because she had seen the man he'd become, gentle, healed, and ready to love without fear. Their wedding was set for April. Everything was perfect, until life decided to remind them that love isn't tested when things are easy, but when the storms come. One evening, Ethan received a phone call that froze his blood. Tara had been in an accident. He dropped everything and rushed to the hospital. When he saw her lying on that hospital bed, pale, bruised, and unconscious, something inside him broke again. He held her hand and whispered, "No, not again. I can't lose you too." The doctor said she would survive, but the accident had affected her memory. She remembered pieces of her life, her family, her work, but not Ethan. When she woke up and saw him, her eyes were filled with confusion. "Who are you?" she asked softly. Those 3 words pierced deeper than any heartbreak he had ever known. Days turned into weeks. Tara remained kind but distant, like a stranger wearing the face of the woman he loved. Friends told him to give her time. Others told him to walk away. She may never remember, they said, but Ethan stayed. Every morning, he brought her flowers, the same white tulips she loved. He told her stories of their past, the burnt pancakes, the road trips, the late-night talks. Sometimes she smiled politely. Other times she just stared at him blankly, but he never gave up. He remembered how she once said, "Then I'll wait outside your heart until you're ready to open again." Now it was his turn to wait. Outside hers. Months passed. One evening, he found her sitting in the hospital garden, sketching the sunset. When he approached, she looked at him and said, "I don't know why, but when I see you, my heart feels calm, familiar, safe." Tears filled his eyes and he smiled. "That's because your heart remembers, even if your mind doesn't." Something shifted that day. Slowly, the memories began to return. Flashes of laughter, the smell of his cologne, the warmth of his hand. One afternoon, as he was reading by her bedside, she suddenly whispered, "You're the man who vowed never to love again, aren't you?" He froze. That was a line she had teased him about during their early days. Words she once used to make him blush. He looked at her, hardly breathing. You remember?" Tara smiled faintly. "Not everything, but enough. Enough to know that I love you." He held her hand, tears falling freely, and whispered, "And I love you, even when you forgot me." 6 months later, they finally married. Not with grand luxury, but with quiet grace. Their vows were simple but powerful. "I choose you again, in memory or in loss, in joy or in pain." Because love doesn't end when life forgets. It begins when hearts remember. When Ethan kissed her that day, it wasn't just a wedding, it was redemption. The man who once vowed never to love again had not only found love, he had learned that real love survives everything: distance, betrayal, time, even forgetfulness. Because love, when it's true, always finds its way back home. Some to heal you, and a few like Tara, to show you that even the man who vowed never to love again can still find forever. Moral of the story: sometimes the person who breaks your heart is not the end of your story. They're just a chapter that teaches you how strong you can be. And when the right person finally arrives, they'll help you remember that love, true love, never really dies. It just waits for the right soul to awaken it again.